Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm trying to figure what's this? What's it? Help me out here. Okay.
Rogers wasn't working for a minute, but it is now. So
That's
the
odd. The
Pastords-
pastor's having technical
I'm
difficulties.
so much taller than you. Watch this. All right, there we
You
go.
are. Now we're.
I forgot to adjust my
Look
chair.
at us.
You. I punched him really
Remember
hard.
when I used to do that?
I do. Gosh, don't do that ever again. That was evil.
What did we call that? You would get someone your knuckle and get them right in the muscle and create a little bump there.
Yeah, it was very painful. You and Don Sandberg thought it was hilarious, which I did not. So,
Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. I'm gonna take just my sweater.
Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Mr. Rogers.
That's great. Hey, Raj, I learned something new this week.
And I did as well. So when you tell me what you learned, I'm going to tell you something I learned.
Well, you know, as you came in the door, you were singing a Christmas carol. Roger and I sing Christmas carols year round. He was saying, "Troll the ancient Yuletide carol."
La 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 la.
Now, that's one of many Christmas songs that no one actually knows what the lyric means. Troll the ancient Yuletide. I don't even like.
Right. There's figgy pudding.
Figgy pudding.
There is
the Yule log. There's chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Who has ever done that before?
Well, those things blow up. Are you kidding me? It's an eye hazard. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. So speaking of trolls and trolling, so Marie and I did our first public webinar, mistake number one, on the OnZoom platform, which is in the beta format. I know why it's in beta now, because it's needs some help. Needs some work. We're the guinea pigs of the OnZoom platform. So you have Zoom and you have OnZoom. OnZoom is their specific webinar-based platform.
Okay, so webinars are taken out. Webinars are trending.
Webinars are trending, and we're doing one. So we're doing a 3-week webinar called Unmasked Friendships in a Post-Pandemic World.
Are we really past the pandemic?
Well, no, but the idea was post-pandemic is as in it's an endemic now. So it's like the flu.
In an endemic world.
Okay. The sinus infection.
Gotcha.
The COVID.
Like you had. The sinus infection like you've had.
Oh my gosh. Monday, I was in bed literally 16 hours on Monday. I mean, chills, body ache. Didn't have a fever, but had chills, body ache, fatigue. Sad. You know, where you sit up in bed and you're like, okay, this is it. I'm getting out. And you're like, no, I'm not. And you just go right back down.
You still look awful today.
Thank you. But back to trolling. So the troll, so what we started, so
tell us what trolling is.
We've been testing this for weeks to get it right. So we can record it correctly. We can control who's coming in. They're in the waiting room. We send them all in at once. We welcome them. We start the webinar. None of that worked.
So now this is the launch. You're going to do this the first time.
This is the first
webinar.
That's first one. Yes, first one I've ever done. The first one Maria and I are doing together.
I've never done a webinar.
It's live, and we're recording it with everything on screen. So everything on screen this is important to know. Everything that comes on screen is being recorded, including the chats that are coming across the bottom, which we thought we had eliminated. Apparently not. So literally, we go 1, 2, 3, go, and within like 10 seconds. I see the most profane thing come across my screen, telling me to do something obscene. And I mean, I did that. I just went, I guess I wasn't sure what to do at that point. I'm like, we've lost control.
Well, and of course, what's going in your mind is now all these things immediately. Wait a second. Everybody can see this now.
Everybody can see this. I feel bad for them because it's obscene.
Right.
And then more starts coming up. One person said, "Kill yourself, Marie." I mean, just evil stuff. So what had happened, and anyway, everyone just got let in automatically, and we didn't even have any control over that. And just names start popping up on screen, and people start chatting like crazy. And so I'm like, that's it. I'm just staying focused. You know, I don't know what your thoughts on spiritual warfare are, but I'm like, this is warfare and I'm sticking with it, man. I mean, so I just focused. I stopped looking at anything down there And I just started talking to the listeners. Well, while I was talking, Marie's over there furtively just looking, and she found a way to shut off the chat. Not before we had 5 minutes of profanity and obscenities. Just,
Did you restart? Did you kind of just start over?
Nope, just kept on going.
Okay.
But it was so funny. Marlena was watching, and she was seeing all this stuff on her little screen. So she set her phone down and went in the kitchen, just listened to it. So as soon as we're done, she runs in the room and she goes, "Hey, that was a great podcast. I don't want you guys to be discouraged. That was really, really good. The webinar was good." And I said, "Did you have the chat on your screen?" She goes, "Yeah, I just set my phone down and listened to it." We found out other people did the same thing. They just walked into their kitchen. So we've learned there are trolls out there that are just looking for your webinar. And if it's public, what they do is 1 minute before, because we had 10 tickets sold. And then 1 minute before, we shot to 17. All these people will immediately sign up. And and now they have the link because it automatically sends them a link.
They pay to do it?
No, there's no pay.
Oh, okay.
We're going to be charging from now on. And then they just come in and they just start messing with your. But anyway, I was amazed at how after the first couple of minutes because we're both thrown off, obviously, but we got settled in. And so we're going to reshoot the 30-minute webinar next Monday before we do the webinar after we have the sibling Zoom. So I've got Zoom next Monday. But it just made me think or wonder with our listeners, why would someone do that?
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, Marlene and I were scratching our heads. Now, I will say, Maria and I both found ourselves laughing later because some of it was just funny. But I'm like, what? It's like I have nothing better to do. I'm so excited about going on to someone else's webinar to sabotage it.
But it's childlike because
it's very childlike
because we loved that as kids.
Oh yeah, pranksters.
And I'll be honest, as an adult, I still have that thing. Sometimes when I learn something irritates
Were you that
somebody,
one guy? Please tell me that was not you.
No, I don't know anything about a webinar you might have had on a. Yes, not. I was not watching your webinar at all.
Okay, so as kids, we enjoyed pranks. Blah blah blah.
No, it's just is. You could even think for kids, why? What's the draw of that? Just to. Because we love to think, okay, kids are all nice and lovey with it. But no, we can be really, there's a certain fun in
being mean,
knocking over something this child just built. Well, or
who are you? I don't even know who you are. I have never found joy in knocking over something some kid built.
Bruce, I'm talking about as kids we did.
I didn't do that.
Of course you did.
I was building the thing and you were knocking it over.
No, David would build a thing, and because both of us were so envious of his building skills, we destroyed the evidence immediately.
David was the only one that could build a rocket that would actually launch out of Legos. No, and he would use like a hairspray can for the rocket booster he was nuts. Anyway, it made me sad, but then it reminded me of these words of Jesus who said, "When you're persecuted, jump for joy." Now just think about that for a minute. I mean, that sounds crazy, but actually that's why even Marlena got to laugh. We got to laughing about it afterwards. I had joy. And I thought what Marie said afterwards was good. She goes, "Bruce, we showed up. I mean, we showed up. We kept on going. We stayed with it. We didn't let it through. I mean, it threw us for a minute. I mean, because at one point I'm staring at the screen like this.
Did I read
right. I'm like, was that
suck what?
Oh. Right. Was that a transcript of that? Because that's not what I just said. Did we have closed caption? The whole thing was very interesting. But I realized anytime you show up, anytime you take the risk to do something new, and we're trying to do something good, trying to do something helpful, there are going to be other people that don't want you to succeed and then want to destroy. And I just realized, and we're doing the kingdom thing. I mean, because I'm talking about Genesis 2 and God, who's in eternal community, saying it's not good for man to be alone and all of that. And anyway, it worked out. And we're going to reshoot it because we want to be able to offer this webinar to people on an ongoing basis without the profanity-laced edition. If you want the profanity-laced edition, I'll send that to you free of charge, and you can just get a hoot out of it. But
that's one you could probably get some money for.
I probably could. It's like the outtakes,
right? People pay. Wait, just how bad did it go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They want to know now.
Well, I'm saying now. There's that other thing. We are also attracted to disasters.
We are. It's true.
There is something.
It is true.
That is even. Would someone go that far? Oh my gosh, they would.
Oh yeah, they would. They would go there. That's for sure. Anyway, so just reminding listeners, when you're doing the right thing, when you're doing something good, when you're following Jesus, when you're trying to help others, whatever your belief system is about spiritual warfare. I know that's an interesting. We ought to talk about that sometime. But people are going to get after you, and the enemy's going to get after you. I mean, it's interesting. Jesus never hesitated to talk about Satan as a real person causing real problems,
right?
With tremendous power,
right? No, I still find myself. I'll have that little pause. Mm-hmm. You said, maybe especially giving Satan his name. You know,
yeah.
I like to go with the enemy,
father of lies.
You know, but I have given much more thought, particularly with deception and the right. Best deceptions. So I literally had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who's former atheist, who's come to become a follower of Jesus. And we were just, awesome. It's just been this, we had this wonderful conversation about evangelism and like how, you know, I that was always awkward, and people trying to do that to me and preaching at me. And how do you do? There was a fascinating conversation, but then we got into this other thing about. I said, "Listen, I got to tell you, this is one reason why I believe there's a real enemy. Is when I look at some of the deceptions that Christians are buying, I look at some of the things that they're because the enemy's greatest, he's a destroyer." And he's a deceiver. And
so angel of light, right, masquerades as an angel of light, wolf in sheep clothing. But those are deceptions.
Yeah. So, but the deception is the good guy. The best deceptions look spiritual. They actually sound they sound like they're from
godly, from the light. Right.
That's an angel of light. So
you've also got a timer there in case you're
wondering.
Okay. That threw you, didn't it?
Troll. What's that comment that was left there?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So the best deceptions are spiritualized.
So when I think about I was talking to my friend about this idea that the kingdom of heaven is just about the future. It's just a ticket to, right. It's not about changing to now. It's not.
It's just destination.
So God's not interested. So the kingdom of heaven. Well, but here's Jesus who comes and says, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's right here.
Right.
You can walk in right now, and it's going to be good news for the poor today. It's not, the good news for the poor is not, well, you know, you may be poor for the next 60 years, but you know, one day.
But you're going to be rescued when the earth becomes a ball of fire.
Right. The idea is that the kingdom of heaven is now. Well, this is such a pervasive idea, has been in pockets of the church and our pocket of the church that we grew up in, that it was primarily, I said, how did something like that become so entrenched? Oh, another classic example. How did the idea that caring for the poor was actually anti-gospel?
Okay, so Roger, I've been reading a lot of interesting things on this about how people are certain Christians are trying to completely dismiss this social gospel, social justice initiatives that and I'm just like, but wait. In Jesus' very first message, okay, that's a big deal. Jesus is going to preach his first sermon.
Right.
He's preaching good news to the poor. I mean, and freedom for the captives. I mean, if you look at it, it's a justice message.
Right.
The very first talk Jesus does. And yet we have, certain evangelical strains I mean, that's probably the wrong word.
Viruses.
No. Certain evangelical groups,
Pockets. Trolls.
pockets. That sounds like something that develops in the back of your throat.
Strain in the pocket.
No, but that are trying to dismiss that. And I realize with a new political season ramping up, it's already, I can see it. They're already trying to, we're coming up with new terms, because I'm realizing, because I'm in the middle of writing this chapter on labels, the first thing we do is dismiss. I give you a label like woke.
Yep.
Now I dismiss you because I don't have to listen to you now. You're woke, or you're buying into that. And Roger, here's what they add to it to demonize it. Now it's woke mob. What does the term mob make you think?
Sure, it's a
chaotic,
out
mafia, out of control, vigilante. And I realized they've dismissed it. Oh, woke. That's all that woke. And then it's woke mob. And it's demonize it. And then the same thing on the conservative side. And it's not just one side doing it. Both sides do it.
Yep.
And I just realized again, I just want to avoid labeling people. Because once I label someone, there's a part of me that judges internally whether or not I'm really going to listen to them, or whether I'm going to debate with them.
Right.
You know, it's that's really all I had to say there.
No, but that is part of the, so all kinds of, you're bringing up, so there's the lie around, okay, that care for racial justice, care for justice for the poor, this is actually anti-God.
God is not interested in that.
That's actually a competitor to the gospel. How did we get there? We can't possibly imagine that the enemy is at work as an angel of light in our churches.
Yeah.
In me.
Right.
Now, this isn't me sitting here saying I've got it all right either.
I'm not critiquing it from, I'm preaching to myself, because I'm talking about how quickly I judge. In other words, I'm even writing this chapter from the perspective, realizing, oh my gosh, I do this all the time. I can say the right thing, even cognitively know the right thing, but these judgments take place when I hear certain key terms, and the temptation in my own mind is to be dismissive about it. Here's what's coming. And
well, Joy and I were talking about this morning. My wife, Joy, we were talking about this, that tendency when someone, which I think the enemy is at work in.
Yep.
When I encounter people that I disagree with, is I want to avoid. I want to
avoid.
And when in fact, God wants me to move toward. One of the things I
press in,
passionately believe, is people that disagree with me have something to teach me.
Absolutely.
So this is why the great danger, not in the church, but in our country and different, one of the great dangers is we have leanings that will become imbalances and unhealthy imbalances without community. Where I'm going with that is, there are people, we talk about Jesus being full of grace and truth.
Yes.
There are people that lean more into the truth side. We've got to be people of truth. We got to guard the truth. We want to make sure truth isn't
doctrine.
So then we've got grace people. Why aren't we loving people?
Love.
We've got to be loving.
Love.
And here's the thing.
And then you got people that love doctrine. And then you have Dr. Love. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're doing great. I'm feeling better today. I can tell I'm feeling better today. This is good. It's bad for our listeners.
I liked you better when you were ill.
Okay. Sorry about that.
But where God is reminding me is, and I believe this, but it's hard to live out. These lean into truth people and then lean into grace people desperately need each other. Because here's what the lean into truth people are going to keep leaning that way. And if they isolate from the lean into grace people, they're going to become Pharisees.
Right.
They don't want to be, but the lean into grace people, if they decide, and I lean more on the grace side. So I realize I need to lean into truth, lean into doctrine, because I can find, if I'm isolating, I'm going to be prone to somehow then truth gets a little bit more back and then a little bit more. And then where I've seen some churches have just sort of like, well, we don't believe anything. That love, that getting to love, we actually, there's nothing to anchor in. There's nothing really.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, that's the danger.
Right.
And here's the thing. The enemy, who's a destroyer,
he's working both sides of it.
And he loves the isolation.
Digging it.
Because where God is wanting to move us to community with our differences, because we need each other to stay healthy and balanced. But when I decide that's a Make America Great person, that's a MAGA person, and that's not me. And
or that's a woke mob person, and that's not me.
Christian nationalism, I'm not. But here's still somebody made in the image of God that I'm supposed to learn from. Here's still somebody.
And it is what makes community so difficult. So
yes.
So I was thinking about this morning while I was taking a shower. It's so funny that we're talking about this, because for years I've taught community as common unity.
Right.
In other words, you have a common unity. Our common unity is in Christ. It's unity in Christ. In other words, there's all sorts of things that can divide us. Just can't. We're going to believe differently about things.
Right.
And that's fine. But I have this steadfast foundational belief that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He's the way of life. He's the way of truth. He's the way of grace. He's the whole thing. So we can disagree on all sorts of other doctrinal issues and practical issues, but that common unity comes from Christ. Now, what I was thinking about this morning, back to that. So there's one verse in Scripture, I can't think of any others, but one verse in Scripture that was used over and over and over again as to why we should be in church 5 times a week, which was, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together.
Right.
I think that was the King James Version. What's your take on that? I'm throwing a question out to Roger. I don't have the answer, but I'm just like, there's one verse, but it was used over and over again. You should be in church for this reason. Forsake not the assembling of yourselves together, as some are in the habit of doing. What was that about, do you think? Is that Hebrews?
I believe it is.
Because I know you have stronger feelings about gathering than I do, particularly in this season. And I wonder if that was part of your own draw toward gathering more in this season.
Well, even if I look at Jesus and the 12,
yep,
they're gathering. There's an intentionality about that. I think there is. When the church emerged, what did emerge, what's clear in the book of Acts, you don't just have this sudden flood of people who turn to Jesus. They began then to meet, to get, in other words, it was almost, I would say, reflexive, led by the Spirit, that you're going to gather. You're going to gather for breaking of bread. You're going to gather for learning and teaching. You're going to gather for prayer, and you're going to gather. And I think that is vitally important. I think it's vitally important, honestly, because even if you think one of the things that can move us away from gathering is it is messy. It is, and again, we've laughed about the disciples. Okay, a tax collector and a zealot, but you've got wealthier people, you've got fishermen, you've got some blue collar, you've got this very interesting mix. You can only imagine the kind of conversation. Well, at times they were arguing over who was the greatest and who was most important. And so they got into arguments all the time.
They certainly didn't agree on everything.
So what you want to do, I think the pull is away from, but when I look at the values, see, the value of gathering is, even if I look at something like, is it 1 Corinthians 14? Everyone comes, they've got a word, they've got a song, they've got a thought, they've got a gathering values community, gathering values learning from each other. So don't forsake the idea that you're going to fill a pull, whatever it is, whether it's, which I feel, I've come a long way in the fact, maybe I don't need the gathering as much, which of course is a tragically myopic. It's just seeing the church is for me and not seeing that I'm actually
that for the church,
right. That others need you as well. So I do think that this gathering is a place. I also think the gathering is where things are modeled. We're seeing Christian values. It's in that community. I think it's a place of hope and encouragement. It's very significant to me. It's very significant to me. You don't have to teach this verse, as I understand it, with the underground church. Why is the underground church? People just say, I'm just going to go be by myself.
It's going to be a part of the
with Jesus, because it's just me and Jesus, and it's too dangerous to get together.
And you're not talking about David Platt's underground church.
No, I'm talking right.
You're talking about the underground church.
So I'm talking about around the world, the places where it is illegal to gather, you can't gather, which is also interesting. Why would certain governments be threatened
by gathering?
Because I think the gathering is important. It's where values are encouraged, where things are built. People who are losing heart, the restore the courage. So it's not insignificant to me that that you don't have to give that command to the persecuted church. Oh, they're gathering. Oh, they're gathering.
So let me give you an absolutely unresearched answer to the number one reason we stop gathering. And it's just from my research, and it's my story.
Okay.
Church hurt. Here's what I watched over and over again. When I talk to people, when I take them in the wilderness and they've dropped out of church, when I talk to certain family members and they've dropped out of church, when I look at my own story and I've dropped out of church, I'm like, a lot of it's church hurt. It's those places where we gathered and we were connected with people, and then a thing happened, which of course is one of the things that Emmy loves to do. He's going to create a thing. It can be any number of things. Again, however you understand spiritual warfare, and we're hurt, sometimes devastated by it. There can be spiritual abuse. There can be toxic relationships. There can be crazy, weird doctrinal teaching, whatever it is. Yep. There can be things swept under the rug. There can be, and what happens is a person goes, that's not for me. And then the temptation is, of course, the enemy loves this. I'll just go it alone. Just me and Jesus. Now, there's a place for me and Jesus.
Yes.
Okay. As in, there's times where Jesus would walk with Peter and have a little talk with him. Let's have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our troubles. He will hear our faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. So when you feel a little yearning and a little prayer is burning, just a little talk with Jesus makes it right. So there's a place for that, and I enjoy my walk with Jesus. But there's also this draw to the gathering. And I realize I've got to work through my own stuff from church hurt to be able to engage the gathering. I'm just being very honest, to engage the gathering again. Because there's a part of me that's like, I'm enjoying time with Raj. We're gathering. This is fun.
This is it.
I like this.
Yeah, this is all the gathering that I need.
This is all the gathering I need. But I realize when I think about that Hebrews verse, there was something that was going on even in the Hebrews with the people that were like, that's not for me. They're in the habit of, we used to have the idea was you used to have a habit of gathering, but now we've switched to a habit of not gathering. And I've got to find a healthy balance there. I realize the other thing for me is I can watch, Cove Church online Sunday mornings, which I often do, or I can watch Andy Stanley online, and it's similar. There's instruction.
It gives us something,
which I enjoy.
Right.
But you're not having any face-to-face. And again, that's the whole thing that Maria and I are talking about in the Unmasked webinar. We've got to stop trading screen time for face time.
Right, exactly.
We've got to have time with people.
Yeah. So if I think there's so much more you can talk about there, but I think about the enemy who might be encouraging scattering, isolation.
Oh, scattering, yeah.
Right. Maybe that's the word. Gather, don't scatter or isolate, communicate, don't isolate, whatever. But this idea that we need to be moving, realize it's a work of the enemy, whether it's church hurt, whether it's church disagreement. Yeah, disagreements. These are people that it's just,
a lot of those
tension.
It creates that church hurt. They're like, that people are caustic about what they believe. So our ditty for the day is gather and grow, don't isolate and be slow.
Not our best.
Worst yet.